to be Masiach Das from the Avelis, just like when a person is Chas v'Shalom sitting Shiva. He should not be Masiach Das from the Avelis. He should not get engaged in anything else. So that's behind the prohibition. The Magen Avraham says to work on Tisha B'Av. You shouldn't work. Why not? The answer is because work is distracting. It takes your mind off the tainus. That's why, for instance, that a person really should not read the newspaper on Tisha B'Av. He shouldn't read any other material except what's permitted, even if it's not Torah, because that distracts a person. For instance, some persons shouldn't play. He wants to pass the time, so he plays Scrabble, or plays chess, or he has a all-day game of Monopoly. You shouldn't do that either because it's distracting. So says the Marsha that the reason you shouldn't learn on Tisha B'Av is because you become distracted. You're thinking about learning, which under all other circumstances is a wonderful thing, but on Tisha B'Av you're supposed to keep your mind on the Avelis, and therefore you should Azay Zok the Marsha. But the pashtus of the Brisa is the reason one is prohibited from learning on Tisha B'Av is because Pikudei Hashem Yishar B'Samchei Lev, because Torah makes a person happy. So there's an interesting diak, Rabbi, that Shulchan Aruch paskins this Brisa in Siman Tov Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Aleph and Hilchos Tisha B'Av, but the Shulchan Aruch has a slightly different way of how he says this halacha. The Shulchan Aruch writes, "V'oser likreis b'Tanach v'lishnais b'Medrash v'Gemara b'Halachos v'Akodos mishum shenemar Pikudei Hashem Yishar Misamchei Leiv v'Tinaykes shal reis Rabban b'Teilim Bay." Now, if you paid attention to the Brisa, you see the Shulchan Aruch changed the signon, the style of the Brisa. The Brisa says it's also to learn on Tisha B'Av, and children are not allowed to learn. You close the cheder on Tisha B'Av, and the Brisa summarizes and says the reason for ostensibly for all of the above is because Pikudei Hashem Yisharim Samchei Leiv. The Shulchan Aruch split it up. First he said it's also to learn on Tisha B'Av, Shenemar Pikudei Hashem Yisharim, and then he says V'Tinekes Shal Beis Rabban B'Teilim. So it seems that the Shulchan Aruch says that that's an independently standing halacha. You're not supposed to teach children on Tisha B'Av, not necessarily because Pikudei Hashem Yisharim. So what's the pshat in that diak? So the emissaries Rabbi say that there's a machlekes hapaiskim how to understand this halacha. You're not supposed to teach children on Tisha B'Av. The Taz writes, and he says over there in Siman Tov Kuf Nun Daled, Vira Poshet, the Pirish Eir Vishar Dvar Mutar L'Gadol Mutar L'Lamid Gat L'Tinaykes. Says the Taz, if the Rebbe wants to teach the children Kinis or Yirmiyah or Eiv or all of the things that are Dvarim Haroim, the Rebbe is allowed to do it. So the Taz, you know why? Because the whole reason that children are not supposed to learn on Tisha B'Av is only because the Rebbe is not supposed to learn on Tisha B'Av. It's not because learning makes the children happy. And the Taz says an incredible thing. That's certainly not because the kids enjoy learning. I don't know if the Taz ever taught Cheder in his life, but apparently he was onto something over here. So says the Taz, what are you talking about? Having school on Tisha B'Av is a simcha? Is Pikudei Hashem Yishar B'Samchei Leiv? Vada ein lehem simcha. Nor v'ozok the Taz, el mishum hamalamed. The problem isn't mitzad the kids. The problem is mitzad the malamed, the Rebbe. Shesameh b'divrei Torah, shalom aditom, mishum shem smeichim. And therefore, zok the Taz, if the Rebbe, the whole problem is because of the Rebbe. If the Rebbe wants to teach him Yirmiyah or Eiv or Kinnis or something sad like that, then gesundheit hate. Because for the kids, there's no difference. It's only mitzad the Rebbe. And the Rebbe himself is allowed to learn Yirmiyah at all, or etc. So who adin? Azay zok the Taz. The Magen Avraham argues with this Taz. Zok the Magen Avraham v'li nira da'asur l'lamed klalim acher. You're not allowed to teach others on Tisha B'Av. K'moshekasa b'Yeredeya. Rak mutar lilmod hachurban de'eno l'sipur dvarim. The only thing you can learn, says the Shmogan Avram, is you can tell them the story of the Churban. Because that's a story. That's Sipur Dvarim Ba'alma. And thus, Rabbi Sai, the widespread minig on Tisha B'Av to learn the Sugi Masechta Gittin of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, the story of the Churban, because that's a Sipur Dvarim Ba'alma. But the Mogan Avram's opinion is that also L'lamed Klal Im Acherim. You can't learn with others. So therefore, this is not a matter that the Rebbe can't learn. So therefore, if the Rebbe, no, also l'lamid in acher. So I don't know if this is what the Mogan Avram means, but Rabbi Yasher bar Soloveitchik, Zichrayna Livrocha, in his Sefer Harei Kedem, brings from his grandfather Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, that the reason you're not allowed to teach Tinei Shel Beis Rab, and the reason you're not allowed to teach children Torah on Tisha B'Av is not because of the halacha of Pikudei Hashem Yisharim. But says, you know what it is? It's a derivative of the halacha of Chacham Shemeis Beis HaMedrash Batal. For those of you who learned in Ner Yisrael, in the 1970s, and I remember this extremely vividly, that when Reb David Zichrayna Livrocha was nifter, a mashgiach, the Rashiva got up and he said, everybody out of the Beis Medrash. Kol Batei Midrashim are B'Teilim. Because that's a halacha, it's a halacha in Yeredeya. Chacham Shemeis, it's Gemara in Ma'ikotin, Beis Medrash Batal. You close his Beis Medrash, which means the Chacham is gone, your Torah is gone from it. In deference to him, you close the Beis Medrash. Nasi Shemeis, Batei Midrash is Kulam B'Teilim. When the Nasi dies, all the Batei Medrash in the city are closed. Zokt Reb Chaim, that the halacha that you're not allowed to teach Torah to children on Tisha B'Av is not because of the halacha of Pikudei Hashem Yisharim. It's because this is similar to the halacha. We've lost the Beis Hamikdash. We've lost the crown jewel. We've lost the whole Makam Avodah. In deference to that, or in honor of that, we closed the Batei Medrash. And therefore, that's why you don't teach children. Not because of the children, not because of the Rebbe. Because you have to go ahead and show we have suffered an irreplaceable loss. And therefore, just like when a Chacham dies, we close his Beis Medrash because it's not the same Beis Medrash anymore without the Chacham. It's not the same world without the Beis Hamikdash. So I'm saying the Shulchan Aruch, that's why I want to say that's why the Shulchan Aruch split it up. The Shulchan Aruch is learning. The Shulchan Aruch first says it's also Lomod Torah Nevi'im, etc., etc. Shenemar Pikudei Hashem Yisharim. Then the Shulchan Aruch says V'tinei Shel Beis Rab B'Teilim. That's precisely, perhaps, what the Shulchan Aruch is alluding to. The Brisa. So you have to say that the Brisa is only referring to the Reisha, not referring to the entire Brisa. But why did the Shulchan Aruch split it up like that? It's precisely because of this. Because this halacha of closing the cheder is not because of Pikudei Hashem, but it's because of the halacha of Chacham Shemeis. And that could be what indeed the Mogan Avraham means. V'li nira da'asel lilmod klal im acherim. If I wanted to give a shir on Tisha B'Av, I'm not allowed, you can't give a shir on Tisha B'Av. Why? Because you're not allowed to teach others. Because you're not allowed to have Torah Barabim. With Masha, even over here, Dvarim Shem Haroim, you could learn Kamsa Bar Kamsa, but that's about it. Whether that's what the Mogan Avram or not means, I don't know. But that would explain why the Shulchan Aruch splits it up in two. Hora number 2, Rabbi, is on the same sugya. There's an interesting shaila, exactly a machlekes hapaiskim as well, whether there's an Isser of Bittul Torah on Tisha B'Av. Meaning you're not allowed to learn Tisha B'Av. Why? Because Pikudei Hashem. So does that mean, Rabbi Sai, that 364 days out of the year you're mechuyev to learn Torah. V'hagisa b'yomim v'layla applies to 364 days out of the year. On Tisha B'Av, it's also to learn. Therefore, there is no mitzvah of Talmud Torah on Tisha B'Av. And as a result, Rabbi say, Chiddush of Chidushim, Pilei Ployim, there is no Yisur of Bittul Torah on Tisha B'Av. And if not for the halacha, for instance, that you shouldn't be distracted on Tisha B'Av, you could sit and play video games, you could sit and play Scrabble, you could waste your time as much as you want, and you wouldn't be accountable for it because there is no din of Bittul Torah on Tisha B'Av. Why? Because there is no Chiv Talmud Torah on Tisha B'Av. Because you can't learn. Or, is it the pshat? No such thing. 365 days a year, there's a mitzvah deraisa of Talmud Torah. And therefore there's an issue of Bittul Torah. On Tisha B'Av, so you can't learn Bav Mitzvah, and you can't learn Hilchos Shabbos, and you can't learn Medrash V'Agoda, but what you can learn, so you have to learn Dvarim Shebarayim. Meaning that on Tisha B'Av, you have to fulfill your chiyuv of Talmud Torah. It's like any other day of the year. I can't learn, so take out a Sefer Eiv and start learning Sefer Eiv. You're Yetzi Talmud Torah, and trust me, that's not Pikudei Hashem Yisharim on Sefer Eiv. Is that the pshat? So this Rabbi Say is a machlokes hapaiskim. The Mata Yehuda holds that there is no mitzvah of Talmud Torah on Tisha B'Av, and thus there is no Isur of Bittul Torah. And therefore, if you don't want to crack open the safe on Tisha B'Av, Gesundheit. The Reb Chaim Palaji in the Sefer Moyed L'Chol Chai says Chas V'Shalom. There's a mitzvah asay derais of Talmud Torah on Tisha B'Av like any other day of the year, and there's an Yisur of Bittul Torah just like any other day of the year. What's else to learn? So learn Yirmiyah, learn Kinnis, learn Eicha, learn Eiv, but Havadi got to learn. This is the machlokes hapaiskim. Why do we say Birchas HaTorah? Well, hold on. Maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we'll answer that. The shaila, however, Rabbi say is that what's the theory behind this first sheet of the Mata Yehuda? How can you tell me that there's no mitzvah of Talmud Torah on Tisha B'Av if I'm giving you what to learn on Tisha B'Av? What are you telling me? You can't learn on Tisha B'Av. Why can't you learn? Because it's also to learn. What's also to learn? It's also to learn Bava Mitzvah. It's also to learn Bava Kama. But it's mutter to learn Yirmiyah. So how can you make this broad statement and say on Tisha B'Av it's also to learn? There's no mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Why say no? It's a Talmud Torah? Because what am I supposed to learn? What do you mean? I'll tell you what you can learn. If there's something that you can learn, then you should be mechuyev to learn it. So how does he say that on Tisha B'Av there's no mitzvah of Talmud Torah and there's no Yisur Bittul Torah? So I saw Rabbi said that they stelled Su a very famous shita of the Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar. I say very famous shita of the Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar because this is the most famous shita of the Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar, and I would venture to say that most people, even if they've heard of the Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar, this is perhaps the only one that they know. Why do I say it's famous? Why do I know it? Because Rabbi Kolevsky used to always speak out this Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar, and Rabbi Kolevsky loved this Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar. And as soon as you'll hear this Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar, you'll know why Rabbi Kolevsky liked it so much, because it embodied what Rabbi Kolevsky was. The Rabbeinu Avraham min Ahar says a fantastic thing in Masechta in the Dorm Daf Lamed Ches. Iker Hatzivoy, talking about the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, is Kreilitzayer ha'emes u'lis'aneg v'lehanois b'mada l'smayach l'vovi v'sichlei. The mitzvah of Talmud Torah is to enjoy the Torah. It's to be mahane your leiv and your nefesh and your zich. When you hear a good avorta, you figure something out and you have hana. That's the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Kirisi Pikudei Hashem Yisharim. Zocht the Avreinu or Avreinu min ahor. Hilkoch. Leishayich l'meimer b'mitzvahs Talmud Torah lo nitten lehanais. The rule of mitzvahs lav lehanais nitten, the famous rule that the mitzvahs weren't given to us for enjoyment, that applies to Tar Yav mitzvahs, 612. But there's one mitzvah that mitzvahs lav lehanais nitten you don't say because you got to enjoy it. Zek she'ikar mitzvasai hi ha'hana. The ikar mitzvah from Talmud Torah is to enjoy it. The mitzvah of Talmud Torah is to get a gishmak. That's what you got to do. That's the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Really, you can't say learn dvarim sharaim shebiyarmiyah. I read the Churban, I read how horrible it was, I read about how women in Nebuch Rahman al-Islam ate the children, the flesh of their children, and I have a gishmak from them. I don't have a gishmak from them. I don't enjoy reading that, and it's painful, it's depressing. And if you do enjoy it, then you should be learning it. Mamela, that's the pshat, that's why they're miwanavshach. If you don't enjoy it, there's no mitzvah. And if you do enjoy it, then you can't learn it. Mamela, that's what that could be behind the sheet of the Mata Yehuda. That on Tisha B'Av there's no mitzvah of Talmud Torah, because if you don't have the aspect that you can enjoy what you're learning, that's a chisar in a mitzvah of Talmud Torah.
But these are remarks that they learn at some other time. And you say, when you learn it the rest of the year, you should enjoy it. When you learn on Tisha B'Av, you should enjoy it.
Well, when you learn it the rest of the year, learn something else that you do enjoy, together with that. Yeah. Yeah, so there Rabbi Akiva saw the kiyum of the other nevuah, but when you go ahead and you read the psukim of what the Churban was like, you read the kinnis, in and of itself, there's no enjoyment there. That was an exception to the rule, because he saw a sign in Hashemayim. Third ha'ar Rabbi say in this sugya, Mutter likrei seder hayai kol seder hayai muparsas hakorbanis u'mishna seizel u'mekayman u'medrash Rabbi Yishmael. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that when you come to davening Tisha B'Av in the morning, you're allowed to read the regular Seder Hayom, which means for those of you who say Korbanos on a regular basis, so what do you have in Korbanos? You have Parshas HaTamid, you have Parshas HaKtores, you have Parshas HaKiyar, and then you have the Mishnah Vezel Mekayim Shal Zvachim, and then you have the Mishnah of the Bryce of Rabbi Yishmael. Now, the reason the Chachamim inserted that in before Psukei Zimra is because they wanted to make sure that every single Yid will learn that day. So if you go and you say Korbanos and you say the Mishnah of Ezel Mekayman and the Bryce Rabbi Yishmael, and you know what you're talking about, so then you get to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So one would think that on Tisha B'Av you shouldn't learn these things, you shouldn't say these things, because this is Talmud Torah. Talmud Torah is awesome. Says the Mechaber, nevertheless, you're allowed to say Seder Hayom davening just like you do on a regular day. The Ramah even adds, Mutter lachzer haparsha b'Tisha B'Av. It's mutter to be Maver Seder on Tisha B'Av. Now that's real learning. Mutter Maver Seder. So what's the pshat? So the Meiri says in Masechta Tainis, Yesh l'meidin mikan, there are those people that learn, and the fact that it says it's also to learn on Tisha B'Av, Shaloi likris b'Tisha B'Av Parshas Korbanos, Ratzaloimer Tzavis Korbaniyim, Mishnah Seizel Mekayman, Mid Rabbi Yishmael, V'Leishiras Hayom. There are those people that deduce from the fact that it's also to learn on Tisha B'Av that you shouldn't learn, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say Parshas HaTamid, Mishnah Seizel Mekayman, etc. Zok der Meiri. Ve'eni raya tayelis b'divreihem. Not true. She'im kein af kol psukim zimra. Why stop there? If you can't say Zel Mekayman, then how are you allowed to say Psukkah de Zimra? What's Psukkah de Zimra? 99% of Psukkah de Zimra, or 95% is Tehillim. So that's Torah. So don't say it. Elo, Zok de Meiri, Kol shehu nemar derech shevach v'derech sheyisayr ha'adnu bahem lahachniya levavai l'tfilah. Anything that a person learns or says to inspire him, derech shevach, he says this in praise of the Rebbeinu Shalom, or sheyisayr ha'adnu bahem, or to inspire you, lahachniya levavai l'tfilah, to prepare one for tfilah, ein bazeh mishum simcha u'mutar. Which means learning L'chud and davening is L'chud. Psukkah de Zimra is said, derech shevach, derech hisayris. You try to get yourself, psych yourself up for davening. That's mutter, that's not learning. Ad kan direi hamiri. So Rabbi Yissocher Frand asks in his Sefer Harei Kedem, that explains to me Psukkah de Zimra. I can understand that Psukkah de Zimra is there k'dei liftayach, k'dei la'oirer, to be, it's derech and derech sheva. But the Mishnah Vezel Makaiman, that's not derech shevach. That's not derech hisayris. No one was, I don't think, more inspired to say davening better because he said kachim kachim shikdasan batzafay. It's learning. That's what it was there for. That's why you do it. So what's the heter? Why is the Mechaber Paskin that Kol Seder Hayom l'Rabbis Mishnah Zeizel Makayman? What's the heter? So Rabbi Yissocher Frand says over here, that which I think is a classic brisker vart, and that is because over here the Chayves Hayom trumps the Yisser of learning on Tisha B'Av, which means there are certain things you have to do because Chayves Hayom. L'mashal, the halacha Rabbi say is that when you say Kriya Shema, you're Yetzi Talmud Torah. Like the Gemara says in the Darm, Yipater Nashi be Kriya Shema Shakas Mar. How are you allowed to say Kriya Shema? The Ramah says you're allowed to learn Maver, you're allowed to be Maver Sedra. I'm allowed to be Maver Sedra. The Teretz is you're mechuyev to say Kriya Shema. You're mechuyev to be Maver Sedra. Says Rabbi Yissocher Frand, this is the Chayves Hayom, there's a Chiyev to do it, you're doing it Machmas the Chiyev. The Isser of Talmud Torah applies to anything that you're not Mechuyev to say. But if you're Mechuyev to say either mitzvahs Kriya Shema, mitzvahs Maver Sedra, B'chiyai Gavna, there is no Isser. One last halacha the Rabbi said on this. Shirsal, we only do because Shahayu Oimrim Beveis Hamikdash. So therefore, it's not because of Talmud Torah. It's because about this is the Iker Churb, the Zman of the Churb, and we don't want to say Shahayu Oimrim Beveis Hamikdash. But that's what we say by Mincha. Finally, Rabbi said on this subject, and that is that I'll be this Meiri that says that anything that is said derech shevach or derech hisayris, it would seem that it's mutter to say Tehillim on Tisha B'Av. And in fact, Rabbi say there are people that as a daily regimen, they say a part of Sefer Tehillim. Some people say, 1/7 of Tehillim. Some people say the Chaydesh. Some people say that people have, especially women. Women say Tehillim, say a lot of Tehillim, so every single day. So it would seem that based on this Meiri, that says that what you say, derech is iris, derech shavach is mutter, so hu adin v'hu atan should apply to Tehillim. So the Magen Avram writes that b'posed noyagin she'ev oivim tilin v'shira yichad rak l'chachmasai, lach l'machrasai. The Magen Avram writes that in Posen it was the minig not to say Tehillim on Tisha B'Av. What do you do about your regimen? So he says, you make it up. You either say the day before, you say this day after. It's like Daf Yomi. And what do you do with Daf Yomi on Tisha B'Av? The teretz is, either the day before, the day after, you make up ground. So in Posen it was the minig, they didn't say Tehillim on Tisha B'Av, and they said it either made it up either the day before the day, or the day after, or the day before the day after. Zok der Magen Avram, Medina zu noegen lomren b'mincha. Zok the Magen Avram that in his Mokum they did say Tehillim. They said it b'mincha. Afal gav da'osh b'talmud Torah kol hayayim. The halach is you're not allowed to learn. Tzarech loimer desfir le'kevin sha'ayimrim derech bakosha shori la'ayimrai b'mincha u'mehaytayma mekilin b'tfilin of a mincha. Zok the Magen Avram that there are certain things, for instance, that mi'ikar adin are in fact mutter. We wear tefillin, we are mechuyev to wear tefillin on Tisha B'Av. We don't do it in the morning because that's the taikif of the Avelis. That's the most intense part of the Avelis. We don't say Shir Shal Yoim, even though we're going to say it. So Zok the Magen Avram be'etzem saying Tilim is in fact mutter. Therefore, those people that do have a set regimen, they should say it by mincha, which tells us, Rabbi Isai, that be'etzim amiras tehillim is in fact mutter. Except because if we're in the height of the Avelis, the most intense part of the Avelis, therefore we defer it later in the day. And therefore, Rabbi Isai, if a person wants to say Tilim for a chayla on Tisha B'Av, it's certainly mutter even in the morning to say Tehillim for such a person, because B'etzim saying Tehillim is mutter. It's only because of the intensity of the Avelis that we defer it, but when the occasion arises, need be, then we're allowed to go, in fact, to say it. One or two other ha'aras are based on a different topic. I saw in Rav Simcha Bunim's Cohen Sefer on 3 weeks on Tisha B'Av that he quotes from the Sefer Migdash Yisrael. The author of the Migdash Yisrael, Rabbi Isai, is the same author as a Sefer on Shabbos called Nishmas Shabbos. I get this Shiloh all the time. It's what's ironic is the extremes over here. There are some organizations that when you get put on hold, so they put on music. So there are some organizations that during the 3 weeks when you're not supposed to listen to music, rather than put you on hold, but the hold being music, they play the news, whatever it is. Why? Because you're not allowed to listen to music during the 3 weeks. That I hold is it's over the top, and there's absolutely no need to do that. Are you allowed to go into a supermarket or a store that they're playing music? Yes. Are you allowed to sit in the waiting room of a doctor that they're playing music? Yes. You have to go wait outside and tell the secretary, I'm waiting out here in the hall when he's ready, please come and get me. No, you do not have to do that. Why? Because that's called incidental music. You're not being keveh yourself to listen to music. It's there incidentally. And therefore, the fact that, you're put on hold and they're playing some music, that's not awesome. Matter of fact, I once had occasion, I had to call a certain organization that was machmir in this chumrah of not playing music. So they put me on, you got put onto the news. The particular story that they were talking about then was such a lurid, graphic story of some incident which I cannot, in the base matters, go into the details thereof, that, music chas v'shalom, but then I have to hear this, all the pratim of this lurid scene, that dosi yamuter. That, in Malania style, I don't like to be so that's a shtus. I think it's really silly. On the other hand, and this is the irony, Shabbat. On the other hand, because people can't go 3 weeks without music, on Chas v'Shalom, so therefore they've come up with this a cappella, which means people that have this tremendous ability to sing, and you think you're listening to music. Now, voices you're allowed to listen to. So they have the people that it's a certain type of music. They're singing. There's absolutely no musical instruments, but it sounds like music. It sounds literally like music, like singing accompanied by music. Why do they do that? Well, it's only also to listen to instrumental music, not also to listen to voices. That, Rabbi say, defeats the whole purpose. K'dai who's strefa space alakenu there for 3 weeks out of the year. So you should listen to music. It's the end of the world. I mean, so here you have people that say you can't be put on hold in music. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people that go ahead and make tapes, which they sell in the bookstores, which affects the sale of my tapes, which is another reason it should be usher. Why? Because it's not usher, it's not instrumental. So this Rabbi say, it just shows a misunderstanding of what the whole halacha is about. He brings down Rabbi say, this is a heter that they used to say when I was in yeshiva. They used to say this, that if a person, for instance, if a person needs music, he's driving and he's falling asleep at the wheel, and he's got to listen to something, and I don't know why he has to listen to music, but that way music keeps him up, then he's allowed to listen to music. The reason he's allowed to listen to music is because, again, he's not doing it for the enjoyment of music, he's doing it to stay awake. Now, why you can't listen to a talk show, or you can't listen to a baseball game, face it, but b'chiyai gavna, it's also mutter. So, what this last piece tells us, Abaisa, is that you have to use your cup. You have to use your seichel. You have to understand what's the basis of the halacha. The basis of the halacha is that we should mourn the churban, we should be aware of the thing, and we should be in avelos. Therefore, if it's inadvertent, it's incidental, that's not what the Chacham had in mind. On the other hand, to go ahead and to use a lomdus to circumvent the halacha, that's certainly also not what the Chacham had in mind. Parshas Pinchas begins. Pinchas vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron achayein yeshivas chamasim al bnei Yisrael v'chanas kinasi b'seichov v'lechilisi as bnei Yisrael b'kinasi lochein emor hinini loisei loi as b'isi shalom. So the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 psukim of Parshas Pinchas Rabbeisai refer to the incident that we had in last week's Parsha, where in order to a final parting shot, if his curses didn't work, they turned into brachas. So Bilam advises Balak to have the Klal Yisrael, the Bnei Yisrael, seduced by the Bnei Mayav, and as a result of that, Pinchas goes and he kills the offenders Zimri and Cosby. And in this week's Parsha, Pinchas gets his due reward, and the reward is Hineni Neisin Leis Brisi Shalom. The truth of the matter is, Rabbi say, that's the name of the Parsha, that's how the Parsha begins. But the rest of the Parsha has almost nothing to do with that story. And if you and I, Rabbi Isai, were writing the Chumash, then we would say, you know what, these first 5 psukim, they really belong in Parshas Balak. I mean, after all, it's the end of the story. Pinchas kills them, he's Mekanik Kines Hashem, he rises up as a zealot to protect the covenant of the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's what he does. So it's only natural that the pasuk should end and say, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron shivs chamazi hineni neisin lebrisi shalom. Why does the Torah, in effect, put it into a separate parsha, and why do we, in fact, have to wait a week to find out what happened to Pinchas? So I saw a word from the Tolner Rebbe Shalita. Tolner Rebbe says an interesting derher. Pinchas over here acted as a kanoi. There's no good word in English, I think, that really says what a kanoi is. It's translated as a person who's a zealot. But Pinchas is the quintessential kanoi. And kanos is what we call today zealotry. Now, being a kanoi rabbaisai is a very, very tricky business. And when a person does an act of kanos, really you have to judge why the person is doing it. There's some people that will do an act of kanos l'shem shamayim for all the right reasons. Because a travesty has occurred, and they're standing up for that which is right. And they do an act of kanos, which even though it's shocking and may even offend people, but this person does it because he holds that it's got to be done, and he has to protest, and he has to make a protest, and even though it's perhaps offensive, but I have to protect the covenant of the Rebbeinu Shalom, or the covenant of Torah, or the covenant of whatever it may be. That's one act of kanos. There's another type of act of kanos, and that is that there's some people that go around looking for these things. They enjoy it. They enjoy it whether either because, they're hotheads, or they're rabble-rousers, or they like a good fight, or that it's a rush of adrenaline, or whatever reason it may be, but people can have less than pristine motives for performing an act of kanos. Sometimes Rabbi Isai, when somebody does such an act, we can't know right away why he did it. Sometimes it takes time to see how the person behaves in the future. It takes time to assess, what was done, was it the right thing, etc. You can't always judge immediately and instantly why the person did it. Because kanos there's a very, very fine line between a kanos that is done l'shem shamayim for the right reasons and a kanos that is perhaps done for ulterior motives or other reasons. Of course, Rabbi said the Rebbeinu Shalom knew right away what Pinchas did and why he did it, and it was kula l'shem shamayim. But by not putting that in Parshas Balak and waiting for a week to put it in Parshas Pinchas, the Torah is perhaps teaching us a lesson. And that is, you cannot judge an act of kanos immediately. You have to wait. And that's why there's a hefsek between Parshas Balak and Parshas Pinchas. Because kanos is a very, very, very tricky business. And the person has to do it l'shem shamayim, and if there's any personal agenda involved, then forget it, you're not a kanoi. This is the type of act you have to be l'shem shamayim 100%, or don't do it. Somebody does something offensive, somebody does something in shul that in fact he should be chastised, and publicly chastised. But you happen not to like this guy. And this is the opportunity that you've been waiting for. You're going to put him in his place once and for all, but it's not pure, it's not pristine, it's not chulul shem shamayim, it's not altruistic. Therefore, that's why perhaps the Torah over here tells us we wait. Not that the Rebbeinu Shalom had any suffix, but this is a lesson for us. The Velt says it's somewhat perhaps somewhat tongue-in-cheek. The pasuk says in the previous parasha that Pinchas saw. What does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, "Vayikach roim." Pinchas saw Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar Vayakim Mitayach Vayikach roimach biyadai. He took a spear. Vayikach roimach biyadai. He took a spear and he went and he speared them. Why does the Torah have to Vayikach roimach biyadai? The Torah is telling us is that Pinchas is the type of person that wasn't looking for such an incident, and therefore he didn't come prepared, and he had to go ahead and he had to find the Raimach. There's some people that walk around all the time with that Raimach. And they're waiting. They're waiting for that opportunity. Pinchas was not like that. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKayin. Aaron HaKayin was an Einakol of Aaron HaKayin. The Oyev Sholem and the right of Sholem. Pinchas was a man of peace. And therefore this was perhaps an anathema to him. He didn't want to do this. But Id L'Shem Shamayim. Someone here told me earlier today that he happened to be in Eretz Yisrael in 1972. And he went into the Mir Beis Medrash when Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, was still alive. And he walked in, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz said a shmooze. What was the shmooze about? Apparently there was a store in Tel Aviv that was selling very, very objectionable material. So what did some kanoim do, some zealots? They went and they firebombed the store. Firebombed the store. No, biyarta harami kirbechem. Layasa came bim kemeinu. So Chaim Shmulevitz gets up in the Mir Yeshiva and he says, to be a kanoi, you have to be a Pinchas, an Oyev Shalom, and a Reidah Shalom. You have to not want nothing more than peace. When the situation demands it, so then you take the Raimach and you act l'shem shamayim. But if you're not kula l'shem shamayim, you're just an arsonist or a pyromaniac or just a rabble-rouser or just a guy that's looking for an adrenaline rush. That's not the type of person that should do an act of kanos. Which explains, Rabbi Isai, the siyum of the parsha. L'chein emar hineni neisein lei brisi shalom. What's the reward for Pinchas? Brisi shalom. You know, at first blush, it's so incongruous. You give the peace prize to a person that just went and killed two people? You know, lahavdil, the Nobel Peace Prize. Is never again, I don't think it's ever been given to a person, I mean, I may be wrong, I didn't look it up, but I don't think it's been given to a warrior. What? Yeah, I know, that's the pasuk, yeah. But it's because he's a man of peace, Arafat. But it's never been given to a warrior, to a general, because peace is one thing, and war is another. So what, the Torah gives hineni nice like brisi shalom? The Rebbeinu Shalom is trying to send us a message. You think Pinchas wanted this? Pinchas would have wanted that the incident should never have occurred. Pinchas wanted that there should be shalom, that this didn't have to come about. No, the situation demanded it, so I took care of it. But the biggest gift you can give a Pinchas is brisi shalom, that this is not going to happen again, that there's going to be shalom. That's what I want. That's all that I want. I have to do this because I have to be mato shalom between Pinchas and the Rebbeinu Shalom and Klal Yisrael. But I'm not looking for fights. I'm not looking for such incidents. I'm looking for peace and harmony. Therefore, the appropriate gift for a Pinchas is hineni neisein like brisi shalom. So the other horror, very quickly, that I'd like to say is that in Sefer Tehillim, Kapitel Kuf Vav, David HaMelech synopsizes the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim and the sojourn of Klal Yisrael in the Midbar. And he goes through the different incidents, of course very briefly, maybe a pasuk or two per incident. David HaMelech recounts the story of Klal Yisrael in the Midbar. When David HaMelech gets to this incident over here, the pasuk that David HaMelech uses is Vayamai Pinchas Vayefalel Vateotzar HaMagefa. Pinchas got up Vayefalel Vateotzar HaMagefa. Now, what does the word Vayefalel mean? So the pashtus means he prayed, he davened. Usually it's Vayispalel. Here it's Vayefalel. The Torah used this form. That's the Pshut Ishal Mikra. The Gemara says in Masechta Sanhedrin that's not the pshat. That when the pasuk says Vayamid Pinchas Vayifalel, the lashon falel is related to the lashon of pilulim. Says the Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin Memdalid Malamed Sha'asa Plilus and Kainai. That Pinchas went to the Rebbeinu Shalom and had a vikuach with him, had a din Torah with him, and he says, he took Zimri and Cosby and he stuck them in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom and he says, Omar Lefana Rebbeinu Shalom, Aleilu Yiplu Esmi Varboa Elef Mi Yisrael. Is it right that because of these two people, 24,000 people should die? So Vayifalel is Miloshin Vanasan Biflilim, Plilus, which means to take the din, to take the court. That's what the pasuk means. So I saw in a Sefer Beichia that he tells Su that this is extremely precise, extremely meduyik. And this is based on a Yisod that we all really should know. It's a Yisod from the Sefer Ha'ikrim from Rav Yosef Albo. We all know Rabbi said there's such a thing called tefillah. A person's a chayla, a person needs parnasa, a person needs a shidduch, we daven. How does davening help? If there's a gzeira on a person that he should be sick, then this is what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants for this person. So how does davening, I shouldn't be sick, or I need parnasa, whatever it may be, how does it work? Says the Sefer Ha'ikrim, the tefillah works is because by virtue of the tefillah you become a different person. And therefore the gzar din that that the person should be sick or the person should be poor, the person should be whatever, that was on somebody at that lower level. But by davening and by being mispalo, you become a different person. It affects you. So the gzeira that was issued, that was for that person on that lower stage, that lower madrega. By davening, one elevates oneself. And as such, he becomes a different person. And on that person, there was no gzeira that he should be ill or whatever. That is why Rabbi Sai, this explains why is the lashon of tefillah b'lashon lehispalel, which is the reflexive form of the lashon of lehispalel. Reflexive meaning it affects the person. The answer is because that's what tefillah does. It changes you. It affects you. You're different. As a result of the fact that you're different, the gzeira doesn't apply to you. So tefillah is always works and is necessary when the person has to change, when the person has to become elevated, when the person has to become a different person. Pinchas didn't have to become a different person over here. Pinchas was a tzaddik. He was the only person in Klal Yisrael that stood up for the covenant of the Rebbeinu Shalom. There was no need for him to be mispalel, because on his madrega, he at this point was perfect. Therefore, David HaMelech employs the lashon vayifalel. It wasn't mispalel. There was no need for tefillah here. What was needed over here, sha'asa pilulim and kainai. They came to the Rebbeinu Shalom and says, hayitoche? Because of these two, this should cause such a madrega? That's what motivated perhaps David HaMelech to change the lashon to what the Gemara sees in that. Because here there's no need for Pinchas's tefillah, because Pinchas is who Pinchas is, and Pinchas is fine. Vayifalel means asa plilim in kainai. He went to the Rebbeinu and says, "Hayitachim." Wish everybody a gesundte Zummer.
This year was presented by Rav Yissocher Frand Shlita.